Hey, thank you. We're going to be calling to order the March, what is the date today? March 23rd, 4 o'clock p.m. We're going to have an economic development incentive workshop. And Sherry, can you take a roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Miller?
Here.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Here.
Councilmember Bryan?
Here.
Councilmember Frizzlone?
Here.
Councilmember Plius?
Here.
Thank you. As you've probably noticed as well, our city manager is not going to be able to attend today, either this meeting or our city council meeting. So we have our assistant city manager, Kurt Swartzlander, here. Thank you, Kurt. Welcome for being here.
My new neighbor.
So the purpose of this meeting is today, and we've talked about this quite a bit off and on. We came out almost 2 years ago with an economic development committee, and things have changed a little bit since then, and we expected that. We needed a little bit of tweaking here and there. So right now, staff is asking us for a clear direction. So when someone comes, probably usually to you first, Nancy, you have a direction, what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and then we'll just ask you any questions. The first question was, and Mel just asked this, is this what we have existing?
Yeah, I was going to point this out.
Okay.
So, good evening, and we're going to be, first, we've got 3 issues to discuss today. The first issue is to talk about the lease subsidy grant. Staff doesn't really need exact things that you want to see funded, but more, I'm thinking more that we don't, the things that you don't want to see funded. Because something really great could come along and then you second guess yourself. So we don't want to box you in too much here.
Can everyone hear Nancy all right? Yeah, I was going to say, a little bit of.
I'm sorry, is that better?
There you
a lot
go.
better, yes.
So, this is the list. I did an inventory of all of our storefronts currently. So this is what we currently have now, as of yesterday. This might help you in deciding, because we have 10 hair salons within a 5-mile radius, that you don't want another hair salon. So those are the kind of things that I thought might be kind of glaring to you all that might help you. The current things that you want to fund is in what I listed in the agenda, and that might change after you see what we have. It was boutique shops, restaurants, entertainment venues, which it doesn't show any on the list, just to show you. Seafood market, physician offices, music, arts, bookstores, car wash, ice cream, outdoor cafes, bait and tackle, and any other business substantially satisfying the program's evaluation criteria and approved by the city as a desired business, which we need to keep that in just so that there might be something that we're not thinking of.
Entertainment venues, at one time I know you and I had discussed family activities. Would we say a putt-putt would be entertainment, or what are you looking at different than what a putt-putt would be?
I look at it as more indoor availability for families. Right now, we do have 2 putt-putts. I don't think that's something that we would really want another one of. But in my imagination, I would love to see a bowling alley with an arcade or something like that for the families to do.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to clarify what you meant by that. Okay, great.
Did you include B of A in the 2 banks? Did you include Bank of America in the 2 banks?
No, we have SunTrust and we have Chase.
Yeah. Because they are not coming back.
Correct.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but in your synopsis, you also talk about clearer direction on the alternate tax relief program. And I have been on city council 4 years, and I don't have a clue what that is. So I suspect that may be the case with others too.
Number 3.
Yeah, is that something Kurt will explain to us?
We'll get into more of that.
One other thing, and this surprises me, restaurants open till 8 p.m., 19?
So, yes, I actually had to go on the websites of them and just make sure, but they're all open till at least 8. Yeah, and that does include like IHOP and Waffle House and Starbucks and
Pizza? Like Bruno's?
pizza, yes. So those are all the different, they might look like a lot, but It just shows that the variety may not be there.
If we ever do this again well, it's hard to determine too. I was gonna say, could you break it out into sit-down restaurants, but actually Bruno has a couple tables. If you're looking at Fratelli's, they
Yes.
have tables, so,
Yes.
okay. Surprising. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, is this gonna be interactive, or do you have a presentation and then
No,
we'll?
it's interactive.
Okay. What I really would be interested in knowing is how much work you, Fred, Stuart, and maybe Mike and them have to put in ahead of time before you come to us. Is the application, the people come in and say, here's what I have an idea of, I want to fill out the application, and then do you all talk to them and spend time with them?
So normally, Stuart and I meet first, and we'll go over like a pre-application with the person. Because honestly, I think Stuart and Fred are probably the first contacts, because they're coming to talk about building permits and all of the zoning and all of that. So then, once they put in an application, we really see if that's something that would be interesting to the Economic Development Committee. Then they come to the committee, and then they'll come to the council.
But if we establish some better guidelines, then you people would not be spending X number of time, X number of hours with them. Can you give me an estimate? In other words, how much upfront time do we have with the city staff for something that may not be approved, but right now you have to take all comers?
I'd say about 6 hours.
Okay.
It's not-
And
Because,
then it goes to the economic development.
And I will tell you, I get a lot of calls after just to make sure that they filled it out correctly. But that's with any grant. I mean, that's what grant administrators do all the time, so, and having done that multiple times, I'm used to that, so I guess.
I'm just wondering, if we gave you better guidelines, would we be saving time on your part or not?
You can't tell them, I mean, you can tell them how to fill out an application all day long, but they're still gonna have questions. Yeah, it's fine. I don't think 6 hours is that long, honestly.
Okay.
Do the restaurants,
Right, yeah.
do the restaurants include those in hotels?
No, they're all storefronts.
Okay.
And as Fred pointed out, if we knew exactly what ones you don't want, then that would save staff's
Yeah.
time.
So that's not to preclude them from not coming into the shores. They can still do that. It's just that there would not be any incentive that we would be able to offer, correct?
Right, yeah.
And you may not want to take any of these out, you may want to keep them all, it's up to you all. But I suggest, I would say, no, we're not gonna fund any more convenience stores, because we have 6 already. We have 3 7-Elevens and 3 other Quick Marts.
And we definitely know, as far as the restaurants, breakfast and lunch is a no.
And salons, hair salons, I don't think we really need another, that's not something we should give an incentive on, because we already have 10.
And I don't think we need another tattoo parlor. That's just my opinion. We have 2 of them. And I'm not sure how busy they are. I don't have any problem with people that want tattoos, but I'm just wondering if, with our elderly population, we're looking for a 3rd tattoo parlor.
Madam Mayor, I want to say something, and I just don't want to disrespect the workshop, but we as a city council really shouldn't be in a position to limit business opportunity. And the reason why is you have no idea what it's like out in the world of economics, of supply and demand, of the base of the tourists that are attracted to the shores, and of the composition of the existing businesses, which means this. Someone's going to come here because they found a vacancy on the west side of the street, which we as a generic goal want to have it occupied as opposed to unoccupied. So for us to limit those candidates, I think does a disservice, and I don't think we as a city council have that background to supersede. Fred's been doing this for umpteen years, Stuart's been doing it for umpteen years, Kurt's been doing it for umpteen years. Now, mind you, we don't have a Chamber of Commerce, but I don't think the town is big enough to have one.
We do now.
Oh, we do? Okay, so we're affiliated with the Port Orange one. Okay. Let them do their job of attracting businesses, and let them go through the process of back and forth with the landlord, what's it gonna cost to renovate? And then if they wanna come for incentives, we still have the right to pick and choose. And I really love this list. Whoever spent the time, I think that was very good time well spent. We'll get the list attached as an exhibit to that agenda item, and then we'll have some grounds to say, you know what, Mr. Convenience Store, we already have so many. We welcome you to the community, but we feel the taxpayers' money to give you a little bit of assistance is not in the scheme of things because we already have enough what we need. Same thing with a barber shop, and take it on a case-by-case basis. But if you start making a list of what you don't want and what you do want, this and that, I think you're doing the town a disservice. Just let the freedom of business, let the freedom of commerce exist. And, you know, to dovetail what Mel said, you know, we don't want a tattoo shop, we have an elderly population. I know, I agree with you, but here's what's gonna happen. That landlord's got a vacant building, and if a tattoo guy comes in and it's legal in the zoning and all that, whether they get the grant or not, they may end up opening. But at least we as a city said, you know what? We're not going to give you the grant because it's something that we really are not looking for. We're looking for entertainment for families. We're looking for more boutiques, retail, more surf shops, things like that. But I think for us to go through this and start fine tuning it, I will have a degree in business, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't have the acumen with which to tell Nancy, you know, I want this and I don't want that. And so I'm telling you my opinion. Again, I'm here to participate in the process because it's my obligation as a city councilman, but I just don't think we should be micromanaging. You know, you pay Booker and Kurt and all these people to do their job. They've all got experience, otherwise they wouldn't have the job. And guess what? They've been on the job for a while. So let's act as a board and delegate to the management what they want to do, and then they bring to us those as-needed items, and then we can address it then. That's my opinion.
Yeah, good point there, Michael, but I think, and Nancy, you can clarify for it, we are not going to turn away, as I said, any business that wants to come on. What we're trying to do is either for you to market to a business, one that we really want, you know, if you're out there, but then also, if you know it's something that that we don't want, we welcome them with open arms to the shores, but you know right from the start you're not even going to bring it to us because it's a beauty shop or it's whatever. So is there a fine line there? Is that what you're trying to get to, that you know ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, I do know, I've already turned down a salon and a spa type salon.
But did that, you know, I guess I'd be interested in knowing, did that mean then that they decided not to come into the shores?
They're still coming.
They're still coming, okay, because like Michael's point, I don't want to turn away any business, but I want to make it easier for you that you know when they come to you, you're going to say, that's not going to fly. We'd love to have you, but unfortunately.
I did say, there was someone inquiring about possibly, and they're not, I don't know if they're coming or not, about another breakfast place. And I'm like, no, that's not something they're really looking to help and to give incentives on, but, you know.
Okay.
Michael, I agree with everything you said. My whole point is, if we're going to save the city staff and the business time and effort to not go through the whole process if they know that this isn't something that's desirable.
Right, but we're not. Nancy just said that she spends a grand total of 6 hours a week on it.
Yeah, I had no idea, that's why.
So that's no time whatsoever. And I think everybody here, again, I am speaking, Richard hasn't spoken yet, but I heard Nancy's comments, I've heard your comments, I've heard Mike's comments, so I agree with everybody. I don't think we can pick and choose. I don't think it's our place to pick and choose. I don't have a godlike personality. If I may denigrate myself, I don't believe that I add any value to to this process whatsoever, given the fact that I've spent 3 years with Fred Stewart. I've spent quite a bit of time with you, lots of time with Kurt. I mean, you know this city as well as anybody up here. And I think you have the presence of mind to know what to bring to the council, what will fly and not fly. And I not only do I not want to micromanage you, I don't want to treat you like children. You have the latitude to be able to pick and choose as you see fit. We have employed you. You are our best employees, and therefore you should be able to pick and choose what you want. And to handcuff you, or for me or anybody to say, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. I mean, if it's a legal business that has merit, you bring it forward. And if it's a legal business that you don't feel has merit because we already have enough convenience stores, then don't bring it forward. I don't think I have to micromanage you I mean, this is a phenomenal list, but I think you now have the basis of what it is that we need, and I don't think I add any value by telling you that.
Well, I'm concerned that the businesses might force, because of the regulation, might force a hearing before us. Can they demand that?
So what?
They already had one.
So what?
I don't think they can demand. I think they're entitled to have their
They're entitled to have their
application
day
for the
in
grant
court.
to be considered, and they'll already know from Nancy that it's probably something that they wouldn't endorse. And then like other times that Stewart's come up, this is something that city staff will approve, or this is something the city staff doesn't approve, and the reason why is it's a great business, we welcome them, but this precious grant money is really to put a mixed use on the west side and to try and foster those things that we want in, and she has her little list here, which is fine with me.
Michael, what you just said, I think, is really very important when you said we only have X amount of money. So with that money, we want to incent the ones, but other than that, any other business is welcome to come into the
But
shores.
that's not Mel's, that was not Mel's point. And so if I may address your point, because it's a valid point, except we've already have the process down. The process that you're suggesting, or what you are implicating, is that someone would come up in a hearing because they are allowed to do so. That being said, the first line of demarcation is right here. So what happens is, in real life, is they're going to make their pitch without an application to the team. That team is going to decide whether or not to bring it forward. And what they're going to say is, Mr. Frizzalone and Mrs. Frizzalone, we value your business. We have no problems with your business whatsoever. But we have a lot of businesses like yours, and I'm not willing to recommend to the city council to subsidize you. You have every right to go up and appeal. That's your right as a citizen, but I will tell you that I am not going to endorse this.
Well, I think that the point.
That's the way the process works
I
right
agree.
now, which is fine.
I agree, but it's not the way it works now, because
Sure it
they
is.
don't know whether to tell somebody
She
that,
just said she's turning down businesses, Mel.
well, on this list, which
Let her speak.
the list is, all right, my whole point was, I'm trying not to waste the business people's time and the city staff time. If they know in advance they're not going to get it, that was my whole point.
Yeah, let me comment.
But I'm fine with them making the decision, and they can tell people no, as far as I'm concerned, based on their experience and knowing what we want. And then if the people come, then that's on them, because they told them they probably wouldn't get it, and it's up to us to say no. But I just don't want to waste the business people's time and the city staff time when they think that any new business that comes here is automatically going to get a grant.
Councilman Bryan, did you have something on Dad?
Since I haven't made a comment on this, I'd like to make, I don't think that the amount of time considering whether to apply for a grant or not, I think that's a very small percentage. If they're doing their due diligence as to whether they should open a business, that's going to take a lot more time than deciding whether or not to apply for a grant. And so I don't consider it much of a burden on the staff or the businesses to decide whether or not to apply for the grant.
Well, having been in business myself, I can tell you that when I was considering where to establish my business, if I thought I could get 30, 20, and 10, that would be a major factor in deciding whether it was going to be economically feasible or not. So if the people are basing a business decision on the fact that they expect to get this, and then we turn them down, that could be a problem. But as long as as long as they're gonna move here, and as everybody has said, every business is welcome here, almost every business is welcome here. But the real key is, are they gonna get a money from us to come in? Incentive money to come in or not? That's the real.
I'd like to add that staff is very clear up front that it is, council is the final decision on this. It's not us. But we're very clear when we do discuss it with them, that it is council's decision.
So Nancy, have you run into any problems that you need the assistant with, or you have the direction you need to?
I haven't myself,
Okay.
as of yet, and thankfully I have Stuart to help me out.
Okay,
too,
so
because
it
he's been
seems
doing
like with the experience that you have, you've been working on this for a while, you know which ones.
Yeah, I haven't had an issue yet.
Okay.
So, but I know it was discussed and we wanted to bring it up, so.
Okay, and
that's
I think
why.
we've reached that. I do have a question, though, when we look at this list. You know, I'd love to have a steakhouse. At one time, we were gonna get Donnie's Donuts or some donuts. What are we doing about not waiting for people to come to us and saying, I'd like to open up in the Shores, that we're reaching out to them and say, hey, we desperately want a steakhouse. We would like it. What are we doing as far as that's
I
concerned?
think the key right now is I've been networking a lot with the commercial realtors, who get the contacts first. And through the chamber also, doing the networking chamber events that they have, I've talked with a lot of people, which has helped for renting the facility also. So it's kind of a double duty kind of thing. So, yeah, it's helping, and getting to know the realtors has really been an asset for us.
When you say steakhouse, are you speaking of a Del Fresco's, a Ruth Chris, a Burns, that ilk, or are you speaking of Longhorn and, you know?
Well, do you remember Port Orange Steakhouse that was,
Sure,
okay,
sure,
so
absolutely.
something along there, so not up here with the Ruth Chris, but not a Longhorn either.
Okay.
Yeah, so something like that would
So,
interest me.
Private proprietor.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Okay.
All right,
I
so,
would just like to comment to staff too, though, that along the points that Michael made about micromanaging. I am not going to second guess you. You make the decision and we'll back you up on the decision you made. So it's not a case of where you're going to have to come and worry about us overriding you, unless you just do something so gross that it's, and I don't
I
expect
have
that.
these guys to tell me.
So I am fine with you people making the decision based on your overall knowledge of the city, what we have, and I guess my main criteria is something that's gonna benefit, the more people it's gonna benefit, the residents that it's gonna benefit, the better it is for us, the more desirable it is for us. But
Mel, we are so blessed to have this staff. I mean,
Yes.
they are incredibly talented. They know, what I'm trying to say is, they know, I'm speaking for them now, even though I shouldn't, but I will. They know that without being told. They already know that. They are well apprised of that situation, that they want to do what's best for the residents. Not what's best for the 5 council members, what's best for the 4,500 residents, and that's where their heart is. They're not gonna go astray from that. That I can promise you. That's how much confidence I have in them.
so based on all the conversation we have, do we feel that we can put issue number 1 to rest? We've had enough direction?
Yes.
You know, that we can move on to issue number 2?
Neat.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Issue number 2 is with the acquisition grant, a grant of up to 10% of the purchase price, to allow the purchaser of a city-owned real property to use funds to assist in the development of the real property, or the purchaser of a non-city-owned real property to use funds to assist in the build-out of the real property. So currently, it's at the closing when the purchaser gets the 10%, up to 10%. You've only done one of these?
Is that Oceans 25?
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
And so my concern is the way real estate is now, it could be, 10% could be very high. And again, our
Be good on
funds
this
is
one, but,
Totally
yeah,
agree.
okay.
a small amount, so I'd like to cap it at 100,000.
And-
Because you do have up to 10%.
Right now, we're looking at somebody who's looking at property for 1.5 million, 1.4. So the most they would get is 100,000. And can I ask, how much do we have left in this fund?
It's that we have not committed yet, about 550,000.
Yes, you go ahead, because
may I suggest, if we can make the decision tonight, that'd be great. But given where the mayor is going, I happen to agree with her. She's definitely, I think, on the right path. Perhaps we can take a step back and consider a 5% down from 10% and 50,000 cap down from $100,000 cap. So we just have the recommendation just to protect ourselves.
Yeah, something like that. I was even willing to go, like 75,000, but the next part that concerns me is, and I know we're gonna have some different options, I'm a little bit concerned, like, when we have the lease subsidy, it's a 30-20-10. So if we're giving 50,000, 75,000 on close, and the business doesn't work out,
Yes.
that concerns me too. So I would want some safeguards in place.
That's why we were not comfortable with it being at the closing. And Assistant City Manager Kurt Swartzlander would like to talk to you about another idea, a lien option idea that he can explain better.
Okay, so that's an option 3. I'd like to settle option 2 first, so.
No, it is part of option 2.
It's still option 2?
Yeah.
Okay. How does everyone feel, Councilman Frizzalone threw out maybe, 5% would be the max. I'm saying maybe 7. 100,000 when we only have 500,000 in there seems pretty high to me.
Yeah, well, I had two different, I like the fact that you have it at two different items, city-owned and non-city-owned. I think city-owned, what we have to realize is when we close on a city-owned property, we get money, and we can give them the 5% or 10%, whatever it is at that point, because we are refunding the fund. However, when they buy a non-city property, we get zero. We get nothing but a future tax increase, but we don't get any actual cash. So I think we have to keep those two separate and then decide that if it's a city-owned property that they buy, they get it at closing. If it's a non-city property, we're gonna have to spread it out and maybe reduce the amount. Go ahead.
Can I address the at closing issue first?
Okay?
I had a problem with this when it was written, and I brought it up back at that point in time. And the problem I have with it being at closing is, this project we're talking about that is a $1.5 million project, right now if they got the 10%, that's $150,000. And we give it to them at closing, we have to put in and make sure that it's in the agreement that they can't flip the property.
Right.
But what's to say in 6 months they don't flip it and they don't ever develop it? The whole point was to get properties redeveloped.
Exactly.
So the first thing I would like to see is that we change it from at closing to at the completion of the project, whether it's a rebuild or if it's from new construction, and I may not use the correct building permit term, but a certificate of occupancy, or I know we have another term for existing buildings, certificate of use or.
Certificate of completion.
Yeah.
I love that.
Or an approved final inspection.
Approved final inspection, so that way you have that, and what we're hoping for, we know is done.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm good.
That's great.
That's
That's smart.
That's the
Smart.
first piece, that otherwise, they hold the property for a year, they've got our $150,000, and they turn around and sell it again for 1.5, they just made $150,000
Right.
on the backs of the city
Yeah.
and our citizens.
Smart.
Not what any of us want.
So if we give it to them at the approved final inspection, whenever it is, and that's before they open, so I'm still concerned if a year from now, we're talking about flipping, but even if it doesn't work out and they go out of business.
So the next piece, and I'm gonna look all the way down to the end of the attorney on this, is, and I've done this in another city for some housing projects that the city supported, where we put a lien on the property, and it was a 10-year lien, that 10% of what the city put up, and in this case, we put up land value, but 10% of that value was taken off of that, and if they sold it in that time frame, so after 5 years, if, in this case, we had land value of 40,000, they only had to pay the city back 20,000. So the idea is that if we're gonna give them 150,000 in this example, that if they sold the property, they would have to give us back, if they sold it in the first 6 months, they haven't even been there a year, they're gonna owe us 100% of it back.
So can I?
Yes.
Can I apologize, go ahead.
No, no.
This was written, first off, I don't even know that we even need this. I just put this on the table that we take this completely off the table and grandfather in Treasure Island and obviously Oceans 25. This was written 3 years ago. Lonnie is not here, but if he was here, but the team was here. Fred was here, Mike is out, but you were here, we were all here. This was written with the intention of really Treasure Island and our own property. This was written at the time of our own property. To Mel's point, there's a big difference between selling our own property and then not. So we put this entire thing together and worked diligently on it for the ability to get the $800,000 or however much money we got for that. That's what it was written for. The second bipartisan of that was Treasure Island, because that was near and dear to everybody's heart, including the mayor, who was getting tremendous amount of questions about it. So we basically looked at the landscape and said, we are really writing this rebate for 2 properties. Those is what we were trying to solve for. So why don't we, if my fellow council members, and more importantly, if the staff agrees to make this easy, we grandfather in Treasure Island with I know there's multiple bidders, we grandfather that in for them, and we take this off the table.
So Rick, would they have fallen into this 10%? I was thinking they were more into that ATR, the alternate tax relief.
At this moment, yet what I'm going back in history,
Oh,
so to
okay.
give you a good perspective and lay of the land as to why this was developed. So the answer to your question is Nancy, yes. Today, it's more the alternative tax relief, because that is the easier way for us to go, and the less expensive way for us to go. But I just think, in my own mind's eye, there has a lot changed in 3 years. The first thing that changed is we finally did sell the property, and they're doing an unbelievable, I'm stunned at what I'm watching over there. But the second piece was we had a pandemic, of which we're still not out of, we still haven't recovered, and God knows Jerome Powell's throwing enough money at this thing that hopefully one day we do get out of it. But things have changed, and I really don't think we should put the taxpayers' money at risk. I am fine really skinnying this down to the lease subsidy, which I think is an absolute a fine thing to do, a lease subsidy, because it's very less risk, as well as the alternative minimum tax for really big projects. And we take off the 10% rebate of up to $100,000, except for, actually, we can take it off for Treasure Island as well. We haven't, because we haven't.
We've already paid out
Your point
Oceans
is really well
25.
taken. Your point is very well taken, Mayor. She's right. We haven't put it on the table, so therefore there's nothing to, we're not backing out of anything. And I just think for the really big projects like this $1.4 million deal, we use the alternative minimum tax relief. And, for everything else, it's a simple 3-year, 2-year, 1-year lease subsidy. And let's not put the taxpayers' money at risk. That's my recommendation.
What are the parameters around the tax relief?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Well, the way that it was, I'm going to let Kirk explain it, but in layman's terms, so that we're just in layman's terms, you come in and you're Treasure Island, and you build a monster hotel, or you are Toll Brothers, when you come in and build a huge townhouse complex, and it's worth, let's say, $75 million. Let's use Treasure Island. That deal's about $75 million, give or take a few bucks. So what we do is, because the thought process is nothing from nothing is nothing. If nobody builds anything there, then you have nothing. If somebody builds something there, then we take the taxes that we would collect as a city, we don't subsidize the county, but the city, and we take that and we do it over a 10, 15, or 20-year period, depending upon the size of the deal.
So, and what he said is very important, it's the Shores portion
Shores
of it.
portion of it.
Shores portion.
The Shores
so
portion,
Whatever we would
our
have
portion
collected.
alone.
Yes, yeah, good.
Exactly correct, just our portion. So we basically say to them, we are not gonna take any money out of our pocket, right? Because you got a fixed budget, so there's your budget, so just from a CapEx expense, you're not spending anything. I mean, really what it is a 20-year lease subsidy. We're using city taxes to use it as a subsidy, but there's very little risk because the business must be there, it must be thriving, it must be a going concern for them to be able to get the city tax rebate, and nothing from nothing is nothing. So that's the encouragement.
No, I think it's a good idea. I would take a look at whether 100% is the right percentage.
Or the number of
And that's
years.
gonna be a case by case, you know, to Rick's point, that, you know, Treasure Island, we're probably gonna maybe look at a 15 to 20. Somebody else on a smaller scale, we might only look at 5 years. So, yeah, it's case by case.
That's really well articulated. It's case by case.
It is case by case, and the two variables there are exactly what you've both hit on. The percentage that you're going to give, because you could do, if you do it, say, a 15-year, you could do 100% for the first 5 years, and then years 5 through 10, you might drop to 50%.
50-50.
And the last 5 years, you might drop to 25%. So the number of years and the percent are the things the council would decide ultimately on the project to say yes or no, and to the mayor's point, those are obviously going to be determined by the scope of the project. If it's $1 million project, you're not going to stretch it out over 20 years.
And not even so more, the cost of the project's the important to us.
Yes.
We all know that we have one that's front and center, no matter what. So, you know, that we're, other than that. So, based on that, does anyone, to Councilman Frizzalone's point, do we still need this 10%? Or whether we make it 10% or 5% or cap?
I like his comment to take it off the table. We were talking about trying to develop the west side. And the west side, basically, other than the Oceans 25, I can't think of any projects there that really are land property where we're going to be coming up with any kind of a development.
Well, the only other property we own, correct me, is Beachcomber? Or is there something else?
I mean, other than our parks, obviously, we're probably not going to put those up for sale.
So Beachcomber is the only
Beachcomber is
property.
the only one that's usable, and we have that RFP developed, and that'll be going out shortly to the.
That out. So
get
that
on.
takes care of the city-owned one. So let's take that off the table. How do we feel, and I'd like to hear from everybody, the 10%, do you want that taken completely off the table?
I think that's a good idea. Just, and the tax incentives are in the back end. That's where they should be.
Okay, and so the only money in essence that we would be taking out of our fund, this 500,000, is the lease subsidy. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be the only piece now, if you do away with the 10%, that would come out.
Okay, and I want,
The alternative tax relief, we're just giving back taxes after they pay them.
well, like Rick said, nothing out of nothing, you know, right, exactly.
And that's a case-by-case basis
okay.
where we evaluate the value of the business and so forth.
Okay, I want to go back to Nancy and Stuart and Fred. Do you feel like this was a real selling point? You know, I know there's one in mind. I think they do it regardless, but how important do you think that is into bringing businesses in, from you talking to the?
It was a big selling point, actually, because, you know, we have some properties that are vacant that someone may buy and make into a professional building maybe. And they would not necessarily fit into the ATR.
Okay, why wouldn't they fit in, Kurt?
If it's a smaller project, I mean, $1 million or $2 million project is probably not going to be that large of an increase in taxes we receive. Because the one piece that we haven't said about the ATR is
Different.
it's the difference in what they're currently paying. So over that time frame, when we start this deal, if we're collecting $2,000 on the property, whatever increase in taxes, say it jumps to they're paying $5,000 a year in taxes to the city, The amount eligible is only 3,000 because we're not gonna give up revenue. So we keep collecting the 2,000. So it's that difference between current taxes and future taxes that we
Okay,
rebate.
I need a little bit more an explanation on that. So Mr. Jones owns this vacant property, and it's been vacant for 10 years, and he's paying $2,000 a year.
$2,000 a year
But
on
he's
that.
selling it to Rick now, so Rick is, so you
Rick-
quit, we quit getting the 2,000, yeah.
Well, we're always gonna get that because it's the land value.
Okay.
But what happens is Rick now builds something on there
Okay,
and he now starts paying us $5,000 annually. So the amount that becomes eligible is the improved value.
3,000.
Which is $3,000 in this example. So the only amount that you're deciding is how long are you gonna rebate the $3,000? How many years do you wanna do that? And are you going to rebate 100% of that or only 50%? Or 10%? So depending on the business and the value that you're improving the property, if it's a small lot and it's $1 million, $2 million, you're really not gonna be getting that much in additional tax value, so the ATR doesn't work. So,
so are you feeling, and again, before we ditch this completely, that's why I wanted Nancy's opinion, your opinion, you made a very good point, but is there some of those that will fall into this, that the ATR will not really work for them?
The restaurant that we're talking to right now would not fall into the ATR.
All right, so based on that, do we, and I agree with you, Rick, 100,000 is way too much, we're not going there, but do we relook at that and not even the 10%, do we relook at those businesses that would fall not into the lease, not into the ATR, and have something for them?
Well, I think that from a business standpoint, if somebody's gonna come in and buy a building and improve it, they're improving it because they expect to get more revenue from the leases and so forth. So it's not 100% of their, has to come from the city. They're gonna get some from the city, they're gonna get some from the increased rent. So the combination of the two make it a decision that they would probably go with.
Wait, I'm mixed up. What do you mean increase? Okay, so it's a vacant building.
It's a vacant
that
building.
nobody's had, so I'm coming in, I'm buying this vacant building, and the ATR really doesn't do much for me. I'm buying it, so I can't fall into the lease subsidy. Is there something for me?
Well, we're talking about we're not talking about people buying and selling buildings. We're talking about people
No,
improving.
we are. We're
improving the
talking,
building.
Yes, you're
we're
right.
talking about buying. We're talking about a purchase.
Well, I don't care about purchases. I mean, why should the
Why-
city,
why-
why should the city worry about a purchase?
Because if they purchase one of those empty buildings on the west side and make it into something.
There you go. See, that's the key
Yeah.
word, make it into something. So they make it into something, but they're spending money to do it. And they're improving the property, which means that the reason it's set there was because something was wrong with it. And they fixed that. And now they are able to get revenue from that. And probably more than the previous owner got. So they get increased revenue.
They get revenue.
Yeah, you get
didn't-
revenue,
yeah,
right.
They get revenue.
And that revenue plus the money that we're giving them back in the tax rebate is something that they would consider as part of the total package.
I think that what they're saying, though, is for something very small scale, and I'm trying to think, I don't even know which building, maybe the building on the side of Kitchens by the Sea. It's a very small building, so correct me if I'm wrong, whatever they would save in taxes there would be pretty minimal?
on an existing building, the improvements, I mean, there will be a tax increase because when you do a substantial remodel, the property appraiser does revalue or reassess the property. But it's not going to be significant. And I'll use the one project we've been talking about, even though it's selling for 1.5 or 1.4 million, that it's already being taxed as a restaurant or bar facility. So even though he may spend another 500,000 rebuilding it, the tax increase for him to earn that increment and the alternative tax relief isn't going to be substantial enough compared to either 5 or 10% back. That's what is enticing to them, is I can get that back and that would help me do the deal, and that's going to help me pay for that remodel of that building.
Are we talking about Ain't Catfish the?
No.
Okay.
about something else. So based on that, can I, Michael, you seem to still be shaking your head. Are you feeling for that person, we should not have this middle, not the lease, not the eight, and tell me why you feel?
Based on my personal experience, I've never seen a city that is willing to contribute their own money to allow you to come in unless it's a multi-million-dollar deal and it's a big deal. I don't think, I agree with Rick. I don't think issue number 2, we should just remove it off the books. Someone's gonna come in, they're gonna do their pro forma, they're gonna determine if this business is viable, they're gonna see about their cost of improvements, their taxes, increased taxes, their debt service, all that, and they're gonna evaluate their decision. I think 5%, 10% is really not gonna make or break it, we're just giving money. Again, the whole goal with the incentive was to develop the West Side as we had seen it sort of quote-unquote a blighted eyesore. So I just assume leave everything off the books with regards to issue number 2. Issue number 3 is for the big deals, and that's something that staff takes care of, and it's a negotiation process, and hopefully the representative for the city is a good, tough negotiator. But again, it's a case-by-case basis, so that I understand, and I understand exactly what Rick explained. But for number 2, you only got one more city-owned property, so that's a plaza. Let them go ahead and buy it. They're gonna rent it out, they're gonna renovate, they're gonna do whatever. They're gonna be just fine. And I'm sure the price point will be something that makes it sense, otherwise no one's gonna buy it. But as far as, the non-city-owned property and use them to assist them in the build-out, I'm not in favor of it. I mean, if everyone else said, yes, let's put something, I'll probably go with the city council's, with the breeze, so to speak. But I've never been in a situation, and I've developed a lot of properties over my years, never had any participation with the city. Instead, I have gotten so many comments on how great that our city is for business and how not so friendly the other entities are, the other municipalities, that we really don't need the incentive. We already do a good job of promoting business here. But you go to some of these other cities, there's nothing on the books like this.
Okay, thank you. Rick? Same way. Okay, nothing to add. Okay, I'm still on the fence about some of these, I still see empty buildings that I think look terrible, that, sometimes the landlord doesn't want to deal too much on a lease, so people are interested in purchasing that property. The ATR doesn't seem like it's going to help them that much. So I'm still thinking we need to tweak this, but, that something like this still needs to be on the books. So that's me. So.
I'm in favor of getting rid of it. I really is. I don't think that, I think that people make a business decision based on everything else, and I don't think that we need to be the final determinant on a property that they are going to develop and lease and everything else. I do like the rent subsidy. I think that is, we've already got the business established. I mean, we've got the buildings here. We know what we got. Let's get the business in. We're picking and choosing what we're paying to get in. I think that a business person has to make a decision based on everything, and if this isn't a factor, then it's not something they consider. They still look at the property and look at how much rent they could get, how much they're gonna have to spend, and it's all dollars and cents. So
I'll tell you something else too. I mean, the person selling the property is not stupid. I mean, we've been through this with Zimmerman. If they know that let's pick a moderate building, $500,000. If you and I own it, okay, we know that the city's going to kick in $50,000. We have no reason to want to lower our price point because the city's already subsidizing it. If we know that, we're going to look at each other and say, let's sit firm. Why do we have to take 20% off the price? The city's already taking care of it for us.
And one of the other things that along that line is that we have to be careful too to make sure even the rental agreements are a arm's length, because there's nothing wrong. We had a father and son that came here. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with who they are.
Yes.
The father owned the whole property, and the son was renting from the father, and then we were being asked to subsidize it. But you have to be careful in situations like that, where the rent is a fair and reasonable rent. and not,
And the lease subsidy is a very fair deal, because the person buying a building, if, you know, to Mike's credit, I've seen what he's done with his buildings. I mean, they're gorgeous. So if you go in and you spend $500,000 on the building without any help, and then you renovate it, there's two things at work. One, they lease it out, and they're getting money for the lease, but that $500,000 building is now worth $800,000 5, 7, 10 years from now. So you're getting money from the very lease that's coming in, plus you're banging on the capital appreciation of the building. I mean, you're getting it both ways, where the person coming in looking for a 3-year lease subsidy, it's 3 years and out, and there's no benefit on capital gains. If he or she or actually improves that building, the landlord wins in that deal.
Right, when they leave it.
well, let me ask you a question too, in a hypothetical, like Rick was talking. Somebody comes in, buys the property, and now the property is vacant. Do we subsidize the lease to that place? And if we do, then there is,
Like a double dipping,
huh?
almost a double dipping.
Well, not if we don't pay anything to the person that does the, so,
I didn't even think about that, but that's a great point, your Bill. That's a great point.
Yeah, like a double dipping.
so we're really helping him. We're helping the builder who come in and does it, who's not getting any money, but he's getting a tenant, he or she's getting a tenant that's.
Yeah, we're subsidizing.
That we're subsidizing.
I didn't even think about that, Mel, to your credit.
Okay, and Councilman Bryan, how are you feeling?
I prefer the tax incentives, and whatever they do has to make business sense. And we can't, you know, if we stretch our incentives so that people that were alternatives that don't make business sense, they do it anyway because of the incentives, we're not helping ourselves at all.
Okay. All right, I guess you were looking for direction. I guess we reached a consensus that that 10% would be off the table, so we're back to just the lease subsidy. And then, is there any other questions on that before we move to issue number 3? So my question is on issue number 3, this
Can I
8.
ask real
Sure.
quick, just to clarify, are you giving me direction to bring an ordinance to that effect? Okay.
Yes. Do you agree? We are good. Okay, all right. Thank you. So ATR then, is that just for the bigger projects, or where do we draw the line on offering an ATR? So this smaller business that now will not qualify for the 10%, would everyone qualify for the ATR, or do we have some stipulations in that?
I don't know why you should cut it off. I mean, if they're too small to, and they think it's not worth it, then it's not worth it, you know?
But would we still offer it?
Yeah, I would say offer it, you know?
Again, discretionary.
I agree.
It's the art of negotiation. It's
Yeah.
part of the negotiations.
I agree with Richard. I will leave that in Nancy's quiver. That gives her leverage in deal making, and you know, whether it's $1 million, $1 million, $4, it gives you one more arrow in your quiver to be able to go to somebody.
Yeah, I agree too.
Okay. So now that we've discussed that, the lien is out, correct?
Yeah, the lien would only have been for the 10%.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that.
It's sloppy, it really is. That's not a road we want to go down.
Okay, all right. So any changes that we want on the lease subsidy? Does everyone feel like we are doing the 30, 20, 10 up to a maximum of $20,000? If the total after 3 years exceeds 20, they cap out at 20.
Well, I think that the way he revoked the guidelines makes a lot of sense, because before, we had over $3,000 in the cleaning in a place that we actually paid.
But we're not, yeah, so that's no longer there. We
That's what I
took that-
say,
okay.
with- under the new guidelines,
Yeah,
yeah.
we took that off. So now, if your rent is 30, 20, 10 that we're paying, and it only equals $18,000, then you're getting 18,000. If it's 22,000, you're getting 20. Is everyone still all right with that?
I think that is a good incentive. I mean, that could make the difference in bringing somebody here when they are looking here in Port Orange and and so forth.
And I'll tell you, the vice mayor, I give Mel a lot of credit. That is a selling point for you to the person who's selling the property, that says, look, you know, if you sell the property, the person who's buying, and you want to turn it into a physician's office and a doctor's office or a dentist's office, we are going to give a lease subsidy to that business, so it gives you another marketing tool for your building that you just purchased. I mean, that's a big,
I agree.
And it also is one of the things that I'd recommend if we ever get over this virus thing, where we can have a conference, get together with commercial realtors and let them push our city, because we've got these incentives where they can go out and they can say, we've got these properties for rent and commercial properties for rent, and if you bring somebody in to rent them, they're gonna get 30, 20, and 10. And so when they're comparing us with 30, 20, and 10 on a rental versus Port Orange or Ponce Inlet or somewhere else, that's a big selling point for us.
it's huge. To get tenants, it's absolutely.
Is that, Nancy and Stuart, or Fred, is that more or less what will be happening to the people taking over 109 Dunlawton? They're really not qualifying for anything on that property, but if they lease it, they can say, this is what you'll get. Is that correct? We didn't give them anything at 109.
That's correct.
No, we did give
Oh,
them.
you did give?
Easement or something?
We actually did do the 10% deal with 109, but it was not really under the economic development umbrella per se. It was kind of formatted from that model.
Yeah, because of the easements, it was really.
Easements, that's why I was
payment
thinking the
for
easements, okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But the amount we paid for easements was based off of the formula of the 10%.
Okay, so would that go out the door now?
I mean, that's up to the council.
No, I don't think it was under that umbrella.
Okay.
That's how we did the calculation, though.
It is, but I don't think it
The
was.
number we
Stuart,
derived.
do you want to come up here and explain?
We already have, Stuart was just saying, we already have a development agreement with 109 Dunlawton that spells out all.
Okay,
the
all right,
stuff in there,
okay.
So that's a done deal.
All right, that's,
Just
okay.
to make sure we understand and it addresses this, don't we always have the agreements that we can make with the various developers and so forth?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's on an individual basis, right?
That means, what does that mean?
If you have a big deal, for instance, let's say $50,000 makes the difference to your point of not this 10, you know, the 10%, because you're making a point that says, look, you know, there may make a difference. If they see that it's going to make a difference because you've got an easement or you've got to put, you know, a whole lighting structure in place, they could always come to the city council and say, we are $50,000 apart, and we're $50,000 apart because the buyer has to renovate the entire building to build your steakhouse, Madam Mayor, and City Council. And we can say, you can put that into the business development agreements, which would tie them down to the steakhouse has to be operational for 3 years, and yada, yada, so they can pin them down. But that would be in a business development agreement that would go in front of John Schmitz and his team and planning and zoning, and if they're comfortable, right, they're the first line of defense with putting the $50,000 in so that the builder can build out the steakhouse, and it comes to us, we can approve it without this incentive. We can approve it as part of a business development agreement, which John Kerry will write up.
And each one of those is an individual,
They
right?
stand on its own merits.
Okay.
As a matter of curiosity, how would one go about determining the market value of that easement?
Which,
Same way?
are you talking about the?
Yeah, the one that we
109
sold,
Dunlawton?
the one that we gave $100,000 for.
Well, I don't know that it would be a real straightforward process.
Yeah, it doesn't sound to me like it would be either.
Inasmuch as the sewer station is on their property without an easement, so it's one of those.
Not a lot of
One of those
caveats.
situations where I can tell you how much it costs to remove the sewer station and get it off their property, which we've got a great deal for that, so it would be in the like.
So that's a case by
$1
case.
plus.
Yeah, one off. Okay, so I think we're okay so far. We're gonna keep the lease subsidy as it is. We're gonna remove that 10% altogether. So, I know you had some questions on the ATR. Do you want to read that for us, Nancy? Moving on to issue 3, because I think you're asking us 10.
Kurt, did you get everything?
Yeah, I think we have pretty good direction in what,
I don't think we have to go.
you know, like I said, those two variables, the what percent and how many years, when we have a project, I'll be able to put a little chart together that says if we do it for 5 years, we do it for 10, you know, depending on what the estimated improvements are to the property. You know, we've run already a couple different scenarios on the different projects that have been proposed at Treasure Island. And so I've got a framework that I'll be able to put numbers in. And then you'll be able to see if we do it for 5 years at 100%, here's what they get back. Obviously, it's an estimate based off what they're telling us the project is going to be valued at, because the unknown on that whole ATR is how will the property appraiser actually value that property? So that's the one unknown, but if we get further along in that process, the property appraiser, I'm sure, would be willing to sit down with us and help us determine, not to the dollar, but an estimated taxable value of a completed project. If Treasure Island becomes a 250-room hotel, it's going to be taxed like X. If it's turned into a condo project, obviously it's going to be taxed differently. We would have to, at that point, go to the property appraiser and say, how are you going to tax this?
Okay.
Well, but we know.
We have an idea, yeah.
We have a relatively good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
it may not land the plane on a dime, but we're gonna get it on the runway. I
Right.
mean, they're gonna pull the comps from the Hard Rock, and they're gonna pull the comps from the resort short and spa, so they've got comps to work for what they're gonna tax Treasure Island on.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna be in the neighborhood, we're not gonna be
Yes.
far off.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we based our existing models off of, were we looked at condos that were talked about being built there, and then we used Hard Rock as the most probably clear recent example of a hotel situation like Treasure Island, and that's what we used there. So we would have to come up with those comparisons.
Yes, but it's no different than buying a home. If any one of us want to go out and buy a home, I mean,
Yes.
in order to get financing, if you're paying cash, it doesn't make any difference, but in order to get financing, they're going to run the comps in the neighborhood, and if the comps hold up to what you're buying, they're going to lend you the money, and if not, they won't. It's the same principle. So again, we're not going to land it, I mean, on a $75 million deal, we're not going to land it on a dime, but I guarantee it'd be 65 to 85, or it's going to be something in that range. It won't be far afield.
So you're going to come to us if you have a big project like that with this sheet that says, if we do 5 years, this is how much, and that we're not giving money back, again, we're.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, if we get to that point with a Treasure Island type project, we'll probably have one-on-one meetings with each of you, as to not violate sunshine, but we would have those meetings, and not to say it would be a done deal ahead of time, but what we don't want to do on a project that scope is say, oh yeah, we're going to commit to 20 years at 100%, and then have the council say, oh no, we're only doing 10 years at 50%.
Okay.
So we would come to you and basically to each of you and say, here's the project, are you comfortable with this? The attorney would build that into the agreement, and then eventually we would have the public meeting where you would vote on that, but at least none of us wants to surprise the council, especially on a Treasure Island project, and have the developer thinking he's getting 20 years at 100%, and council says.
Especially debating in front of the public.
And debating in front of the public, absolutely. So we would, there's sunshine we have to follow.
Well, the
but-
sunshine, as long as you don't tell us what
Yes.
everybody, what the other person's thinking, we're fine. I will say, I do like Richard's idea of if you're going to go with 20 years, where the first 10 years is on us, and then after that, we split it 50-50. I mean, I think that's a fair deal for the developer and a fair deal for us. I like this, I like the idea.
You can do that however you want to.
Yeah.
You could go 5 years and reduce it 25% each 5 years. So it's, 100%, 75, 50, 25 over 20 years.
But may I suggest, I mean, again, in fairness to the five of us, right, I know you're going to sit us down and go, well, 5 years, 10, I mean, I would come up with what the team thinks and put that on the table so that we're not going at this infinitum. So that, in fairness to us, you want to bring us in and say,
yeah.
here's what I'm recommending, tweak it a
Yes.
little bit, but, I don't think you want to. Yeah.
And I think it's very important to stress the importance of the project. If you read in between the project.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what is it?
Absolutely.
Somebody that for 15 years has been saying, when are you going to do something, when you're going to do something, is going to gain more weight than this. Do we have anyone else that might right now fall into that, that's come to you, that this would work?
We had someone for the up to 10% acquisition. We have not had anybody else for
ATR, okay. Tell me again why ATR wouldn't work for that 1.4 project?
Because it's an existing structure and it's already being taxed as a restaurant.
Okay,
So the actual improvements are only gonna be about $500,000, is from what I've initially been told.
Okay.
So adding $500,000 worth of improvements
1.45, okay.
to a property, it really isn't going to change their amount they pay annually in taxes by any significant amount. So say he goes from paying, $2,000 to $3,000, he's now only gonna get $1,000 back a year, which isn't gonna be a lot of money.
But they can still, you're bringing up a good point. You want to help, and the cities, but again, to your point, Mike said it beautifully. It's the art of negotiation. So if we take this off the table, it doesn't mean that we're taking the money off the table necessarily. We're taking the ability to make this automatic.
Okay.
But if the person comes to us and says to Nancy, listen, this building's really dilapidated, I've got to knock down this wall, it's $500,000 for the building, it's another $100,000 for repair, can you help me at all? Nancy has the ability to sit down with the team and say, look, here's what we're up against, why don't we do something in a business development agreement where we give them $25,000 for build-out? And they would come to us and say, here's where we are, they're offering $500,000, there's another $100,000 in repairs. We'd like to make a recommendation to the council to help them with those repairs, and we'll put that in as part of the business development. So she still has the ability, and the team still has the ability to negotiate, but it's on a case-by-case basis and an as-needed basis, rather than an immediate, here's your 10% rebate.
Okay, all right, okay, I like that part, yeah.
I just want to ask the attorney about that, because normally the business development agreements, as far as I've understood them, are usually where you have existing code that says you must put in 100 plants per acre, and in that business development agreement, you're going to agree to you only need to put in 80. Is that acceptable through that process, that we would be throwing cash in?
I'll look at the statute and make sure there's no prohibition, but the business development agreement statute is pretty broad as far as what you can do. You would have to have a defined public purpose for it, though, and so you can't just
Which is easy,
pay the
which is-
developers. You would have to be able to justify it as a benefit to the public.
Which is easy to do if it's a steakhouse, and it's not just throwing cash into it. It's not we're not throwing cash into it. We're throwing money into it for a specific purpose. It's to build out the parking lot. It's to build out the kitchen, because you have, the steaks have to be cooked at this temperature. It's to build. It's for a specific purpose. So it's not throwing cash, which is much better than the 10%, by the way, where you just give them, they can do whatever they want. We are basically saying we are willing to help you with this deal, but here's what we want, and that's what we.
And I understand where you're going. I'm just trying to make sure that we just do it legally. And I was thinking more, the state has limitations on economic development incentives that you can give out. I just want to make sure that however we do that, which I think there's a way to do exactly what you're wanting to do, Councilmember Frizzalone, I think there's a way to do it. I just want the attorney to say this is how we can do it. So I agree with you. I think it can be done. I just.
Yeah. Well, again, my understanding is, John, it's pretty broad, but to John's point, you're 100% correct. It's got to be specified that you're doing something with them. That money has to be earmarked for something. It's whether, whatever it is, whether it's a parking lot expansion or it's putting in new cooking equipment. We are basically saying this is a public service. We want a steakhouse for our residents, and we're willing to kick in for the ovens that's necessary to cook the steaks.
Does that make sense, Attorney?
Yes,
Look at it a
absolutely.
little bit, okay.
And we already do that sort of thing, I think, in different areas. If we, would, if we have, for example, improvements to the right of way as part of the deal, you know, and we're willing to subsidize that, we're part of that. You know, there are any number of ways you can do it to easily justify a public purpose. You just, you know, it can't just be a giveaway, that's all we're trying to say. But yeah.
I would,
And especially if the amount that you're giving is going to be less than the increase in taxable value, I think it would be really easy to justify.
So based on everything we've talked about right now, are you going to rewrite an ordinance, or what is our next step here?
I'm going to write an ordinance for.
So you're going to change the existing ordinance?
Correct,
Okay.
yes. And, you know, I'll put in a non-codified portion that guarantees that anybody who's already applied under that will have a grandfather for a certain term.
And it's not, let me stop you there. Who has applied that would be in the pipeline that we would call grandfathered?
I haven't received anything yet. I have been in discussions with someone for the restaurant.
All right, and so where are we at on that person? So if you haven't,
I'm waiting for them to turn in their application.
is that a lease subsidy,
no.
Nancy?
No, that was part of the acquisition.
Okay.
So are we feeling, since they haven't turned in their application, this is now off the table?
I would say that based on what we decided tonight, that anything new is off the table. And I don't even know that anything that's in the pipeline
Well,
would
that's what I
necessarily
asked
be
her, just-
approved, but if it's something that's really beneficial and something that everybody likes, well then,
It was
maybe
the
it will.
restaurant we discussed.
It's the restaurant we discussed for 1-point-something million that will need about $500,000 in improvements to get the kitchen up to speed. Do you have anything else? I mean, I don't want to put
That's
you.
the only one.
That's the only one, okay.
So depending on the will of the council, I could write that to allow them to put in some sort of a placeholder if you want to grant that, if
That's
that's something you're
expensive.
interested in. So that you can tell them, you know, listen, put in an application before this date if you want this, otherwise it's gonna be closed off. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a completed application, just something to get it ahead of the
Really?
deadline. Or if you want to exclude them since they haven't already applied, you know, I can take the ordinance to do that. So that's just a matter of the preference of the commission, the council.
You know, my opinion, you know, restaurants are very difficult, probably the most difficult business in the world to make work. And based upon the numbers, it looks like it's $1.4 million, you're talking $140,000. That's an awful lot of money to put at risk without having, you know, Kurt work some magic on the lien and et cetera. I mean, perhaps, you know, you can find a way to work with John, Nancy on a business development agreement. I mean, to the mayor's point, obviously she's been debriefed, it's $500,000 in improvements. There's got to be a way to come up with a formula that John and Kurt can work through and come up and say, listen, you know, we can put $50,000 and earmark it for new ovens or new pavement or new, you know.
We can do that. I have no.
Okay, all right, and you'd have to look at us too, because I'm looking more around the 25 to, you know, I'm being cheap here, but anyway, you know, I know you've developed a relationship, but, you know, I want John to write it in the contract that that's taken off the board, so, you know, would it be effective today's date?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what you're doing right now is you're declaring a moratorium and we're in an open meeting.
But see, I just think that's really good what you just did. I mean, you just kind of whispered 25,000, and I think that, you know, you don't have to whisper. If you're a part of this and you're in there and they're saying, this is the restaurant, this is what we do, and you say, look, because here's the other thing I think that's important, because, I mean, she's there every day. I mean, she's the mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, my feeling is just like the staff knows us and knows what to bring forward, so is the mayor. She's not stupid. She knows the 4 people that are up here. She knows the horses she's riding. So if she's comfortable with $25,000, she's basically telegraphing to us, without breaking any sunshine laws, that I'm expecting you guys to be comfortable with $25,000. I mean, she's not going to say that out loud, but, you know, that's absolutely fair. So I think you run a lot of this, you know, at the mayor and say, hey, look, here, what are you comfortable with? And she's going to come up with a number to work in a business development agreement that she feels is going to pass muster with the rest of the council. So, you know, we can kind of make this very simplified.
With the.
It's a first pass.
Yeah, with the caveat that everyone here says, no, that's too much.
Oh,
or
of course.
then I'm one
It's a
vote.
first pass. You're
Right,
taking a
exactly.
first
Yeah,
pass at it.
right.
Somebody's got to take the first pass.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing too is that as long as you follow the guidelines, nobody's gonna second guess you.
Right.
I mean,
gonna
we've
come
got a
up-
team- We've got a team that's working together.
Right.
We're
That,
all-
that wants to do the best for the city, that wants
Right.
to see businesses come in, but yet protect our residents' money too, not, spend it as good stewards.
Right, I mean, and Mel just said, if the city staff comes in and comes in with a number, and it would be weird that we would not approve it and he wouldn't approve it unless you did something really egregious. I mean, that was his message. Basically, we're with you. So the same message goes to you, Mayor. If you're comfortable with a number, the odds of us not backing you are slim to none.
Okay, so Attorney Carey, do you have any questions for us?
No, I believe I have sufficient direction to craft an ordinance, and I should be able to hopefully get that to the staff to review pretty soon, because this isn't a big ordinance, so.
Okay, and so does that mean that we have to wait to the next city council meeting to put it on the agenda to approve it, or tell me when it would become effective?
So it would have to, since you already directed me to draft it, it won't be able to be available until the next meeting, which is what date?
April 13th?
April 13th, for first reading, and then it'll have to go to second reading on the 27th.
Okay,
So
but
the-
you were gonna put something in there about the moratorium, so,
Right.
so if anyone apply, it's off the table?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think staff knows that they got a moratorium on it, so they can just relay that to the people, even though it hasn't,
Yeah, I can just memorialize that to the warehouse.
Okay. Okay, any other well, good meeting, you guys. I think we got a lot accomplished. I think we did a lot of give and take, I was one place and, listening to someone else. So I think it was about the most negotiation we've had in a while. Kurt, are you okay with everything we've discussed?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Michael?
Oh, I'm good.
And Rick, I know
Yes.
you were right there. Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
One point on this, does Winn-Dixie have a pharmacy?
No,
They don't, I didn't know whether they did or not.
they do.
You mean because Winn-Dixie is starting to do the shots?
Shots.
Well, it's just like Publix, certain stores will, certain stores won't, even if they had
I
a,
just wondered whether this
Yeah,
one.
this one does not, so.
but even if they had a pharmacy, doesn't mean that they would have to
Just
be
change the
doing the
calendar
shots.
sheet, is the only reason I was wondering.
Any other questions for Nancy? Nancy, thank you so much for putting this list together. I have to say, it was pretty eye-opening, when I saw that, the restaurants, the hair salon, barber type thing. But my direction to you is steakhouse and a donut. Okay, where did we go the other day?
Those are artery cloggers.
Oh, Donnie's Donuts went to One Daytona, and I know we had tried to work with them, but we'll get something else bigger and better. Okay, anything else?
I didn't see massage parlors on here,
Oh.
but we do have some, right?
There's a couple. I put them in with spas.
Under spas?
Okay,
Okay.
that's very kind of you.
All right, if there's nothing else, then I'm gonna adjourn this workshop, and we'll come back at 6 o'clock for the 6 o'clock city council meeting.